Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for June 12th, 2026. Today, we're going to be talking about our disturbance in the Western Gulf, which is starting to get a little bit interesting. Development chances are not very likely, although they're not zero, but regardless, impacts are coming to the northern Gulf Coast and Mexico, especially in the way of rainfall at the end of this week and into this week and into next week and obviously this weekend as well. So we're going to go over that. And of course, we're going to go over the development chances for a potential tropical disturbance here in the Western Gulf. And let's start there with the chances of development here, at least according to the National Hurricane Center. Right now, we have a low chance of development at 20%. So, things are slowly going to develop here. We're not expecting a very rapidly developing storm, although the Bay of Campeche is sometimes known for systems like that. But the general idea is that we might get some development with this system here, but the main threat will be the rainfall, as I'll show you in a little bit. But there's also a possibility, and some of the models are hinting this, that we might see this system here move into Mexico, but then try to reemerge over the northwestern Gulf here near the U.S. Gulf Coast, and maybe some additional development might occur then. So interesting things going on in the tropics here in the Gulf right now. Here's a look at our disturbance on satellite right now, and you can see, obviously, not the best looking thing in the world, but there has been some convection blowing up here in the Bay of Campeche today, and some persistent convection at that. And you can almost see that, some of these convective bursts here on the last few frames do kind of curl up a bit. So maybe there's a little bit of low-level action already going on here in the Bay of Campeche, potentially. And the reason why, even if this doesn't have a low chance of development into an actual tropical system, I say that the development chances are not zero, generally because of the nature of the Bay of Campeche. Number one, we typically have warmer SSTs down there, but number two, the general nature of the coastline here tends to allow for cyclones and vorticity to be able to curve and close off into a circular low-level center. And taking a look at the vorticity right now, you could actually see that there is some vorticity here in the Bay of Campeche, at least on the low-level vorticity map, which is the 850 millibar vorticity, again, courtesy of University of Wisconsin. And I really like looking at this map because it shows you just how much vorticity, how much spin there is in the atmosphere. So it kind of gives you an idea as to whether or not there is actually a circulation, whether or not there might be a low-level center forming. And at least taking a look at this latest graph here on the low-level vorticity, there is definitely some of it there. And looking at the satellite, you can see that, I guess, there is some sort of, spin trying to develop here. And we'll have to see whether or not this is able to quickly consolidate, especially if these convective bursts continue to fire off. This roughly has about a day or so left over water here, and again, in the Bay of Campeche, pretty warm sea surface temperatures, at least 28, 29 degrees Celsius. Sometimes my mind goes ahead of my words, so I kind of stutter a little bit, but you can generally see here with the sea surface temperatures, things are very warm in the Bay of Campeche, and that is definitely helpful, especially when it comes to prime conditions for quick spin-up tropical cyclones here. So we'll have to watch and see whether or not that aspect of development does actually occur. The models are not very aggressive on it right now, though. Taking a look at the GFS here, you can see over the next 24 to 36 hours, this might have potentially more like maybe up to 1.5 to 2 days. This might not move in until early Sunday morning, so this might have a little bit more time over water. Generally, this won't have a lot of time, and as you can see, the GFS does try to consolidate something here, but ultimately it remains very broad and kind of disorganized before it moves inland over Mexico Sunday, and then eventually brings rainfall to northern Mexico and southern Texas here. Taking a look at the Euro on the 12Z run, they do show a little bit more vorticity here that tries to consolidate, and this does eventually then move onshore roughly by early Sundays. So they don't really show development here much at all. But interestingly enough, something that has kind of been the talks is taking a look at the AI models, not just the actual global models. They do something a little bit different than what the typical regular global models like the European and GFS are showing. As you can see here, the AI tries to bring this onshore. Some development does occur, and I will tell you that the AIFS here, the European AI model, doesn't have as high of a resolution as the GFS or regular Euro does, but they still seemingly show that some sort of closed low-level center here. You could actually see by the wind bars, definitely some closed low-level center here tries to get going tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening before this moves inland. But interestingly enough, as we get into sometime early next week, the remnants of whatever moves inland over Mexico here actually make it out and back onto the Gulf Coast, and then kind of, goes into eastern Texas and western Louisiana here over the next several days. And that happens sometime next week. And I find that interesting because going back to the National Hurricane Center cone here for development, it actually seems like the National Hurricane Center is beginning to take into consideration some of those AI models. So I find that very interesting because even if this, isn't fully able to consolidate before we see this crash onshore into Mexico at the end of the weekend here, maybe whatever remnants left of this disturbance might try once again to develop in the northwestern Gulf when it briefly moves back offshore here. And going back to the sea surface temperature graph, very warm in the northwestern Gulf as well, 28, 29, even some 30 degrees Celsius waters here in the shelf waters of Texas and Louisiana. And I want to show you the AI ensembles as well. And they definitely have a signal here. This is the European AI models, or the European AI ensembles. They show that initial development here going into Mexico and then kind of bounces back into the northwestern Gulf as we get into early next week. And the Google AI also tries to do something as well, not as aggressive actually as several runs before, interestingly enough, but there's still one ensemble plot here that tries to develop something. So we'll see whether or not development actually occurs here in the Western Gulf. The chance is not very high, as you can definitely tell by the models here. Most of them, again, have a broad system moving inland, and then, not fully developing, and then maybe some chance that something else tries to get going in the Northern Gulf next week from the remnants here. But even that is kind of iffy. So a lot of uncertainty, not very high chance of development, but definitely not zero. But the biggest threat, in my opinion, regardless of development, and the reason why I say impacts are coming to the northern Gulf Coast, will be from the rainfall, which I think is very much going to be an impact and a situation that will be seen regardless of whether or not we actually do see development here. And this is the forecast from the Weather Prediction Center over the next 1 to 7 days here. And you can see, first of all, northern Mexico expected to get a lot of rainfall. Some areas might potentially see up to a half a foot of rain in northern Mexico over the next 7 days. And then as the general system here moves on off to the north and then eventually off to the northeast, and then, the rainfall totals will fluctuate, especially if some of the remnants are able to make it back offshore here in the northwestern Gulf. So the rain totals might fluctuate a little bit. But, the moisture will generally move on off to the north and then the northeast here, and then eventually off to the east and spread generally along the southern Gulf Coast as we go throughout the next week here. And there too, we might see a decent amount of rainfall. Some areas potentially expected to get up to 4, maybe even 5 inches of rain along the Gulf Coast here, and maybe locally higher amounts. And with all of that rainfall, we might get a flash flood threat here. And this is the excessive rainfall outlook from the Weather Prediction Center for day 4, valid as of Monday. They have a slight risk of flash flooding for Texas, Louisiana, stretching all the way into Alabama. And that threat lasts into day 5 as well. So flash flooding, major issue, major impact for sure. I do not want to downplay that, and that is going to once again happen regardless of whether or not we get development here in the Gulf. So we should be watching the tropics for impacts here over the next week or so, either way. So it's going to be a very interesting situation unfolding here in the Gulf here over the next week. Of course, we will see, though, exactly what happens. Really quickly, though, before I end off today, I mentioned this yesterday, but I thought I'd go over it again today. The Climate Prediction Center now officially says that we are in an El Nino as of their discussion that they release on a monthly basis. Typically, they released it yesterday for June, and they have now issued an El Nino advisory, meaning that El Nino conditions are present and expected to strengthen in the Northern Hemisphere winter 2026 to 2027. And really quickly showing you what they forecast. Well, this is the Nino sea surface temperature anomalies in all of the regions here. Nino 3.4 definitely reaching El Nino threshold, as well as pretty much all of the Nino indexes here already at El Nino threshold and already reaching strong to super El Nino threshold here with the 1 and 2 region. And then this is the CFS forecast predicting once again a very strong El Nino here, probably reaching 2 degrees Celsius in strength, at least on the relative forecast. The raw sea surface temperature anomalies are probably going to be way higher. And then finally, as I showed you yesterday, the probability forecast of the strength of El Nino. Well, first of all, taking a look at the overall chance of El Nino happening here, very likely we will see it for pretty much the next several months here, according to the Climate Prediction Center, but especially as we get towards the end of the year, they forecast a more than 50% chance likelihood that we see a super El Nino. So a very strong El Nino is about to occur here. Nonetheless, something we've been talking about over the last several weeks, and obviously it is going to have an impact on hurricane season, and I talked about that in yesterday's video. So if you want to go over how I think El Nino is going to affect this hurricane season and how things are looking like they will shape up for this year's Atlantic hurricane season overall, make sure to tune into yesterday's video, which I posted. I think it is a very informative one, and I hope you enjoy it. So let me know what you think of it if you do indeed decide to check it out. With that being said, though, I'm going to wrap it up for today's video. Hope you enjoyed what you saw today. If you did, I would really appreciate if you like this video. Comment any thoughts you have below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel here, as we will continue to watch what unfolds in the Western Gulf here over the next week. So I hope you do it with me. Thanks for watching once again. Go out and make the rest of your day a great day. I'll be back with more tomorrow.